This is going to be one of the most remarkable adventures ever. We're going to talk Desert National Wildlife Refuge, Gas Peak, Castle Rock, navigating alluvial fans, and one of the cool things about this is that it's only about 500 feet from where I live, which is in this area, Silverstone. And so we're calling this the Castle Rock Loop. And I'll show you more as we get out there. It's so amazing. You're at the end of Rainbow Boulevard, North End, or Rainbow Drive, whatever they call it. Um, anyway, we're at the corner of Rainbow and Horse. There you go. There's a little parking area here that could accommodate maybe 3 or 4 vehicles, probably 6 of the beasts. There's a little entrance here that is meant to allow hikers and maybe mountain bikers to pass through here. And so everything you need is right here. Really cool. We'll see more about all of this in a few moments. So the question comes, why would I hike in this place that looks so boring and kind of trashy in a way? It's anything but boring. And you'll find out the first truly amazing characteristic of this loop at the end of these houses. Okay, here we are, just 10 minutes later at the end of the houses. And I promised you one of the most amazing things I have ever seen, and you're looking right at it. In a world where the city and human habitation have taken over so much of the wilderness and just keep pressing outward and outward more and more, just taking over the wilderness and shrinking that beautiful area. You're looking at a new boundary. This is the boundary of the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, which is the largest wildlife refuge in the lower 48 states. It encompasses Gas Peak and Castle Rock. Behind Castle Rock, the Sheep Range, huge range. And between Gas Peak and Castle Rock, you can see the tip of Fossil Ridge, which brings to mind a whole nother thing that I'll be sharing with you. But the amazing thing about this boundary is that a few years ago, when I hiked through this area, this boundary was actually a couple miles further out. They've moved the boundary closer to the metro area of Las Vegas. And this boundary basically says this is where the urban sprawl ends. And we're giving a great victory to the wilderness. I didn't know about this until just a week ago when I saw this boundary and was thinking, wait a minute, this boundary should be further out. And a lot further out. And here it is. And I checked on the map, and sure enough, this appears to be the new boundary of the Desert National Wildlife Refuge and the end of urban sprawl. It's like, here's the line, you can go no further, as far as the building homes and affecting the environment, the natural world. Now, I want to share something about navigation by um, just by sight. And you see that there's a line ahead of power poles. And you can see that line of power poles. What I'm going to do is, you see where they're double poles. There's where it's double. Well, this is a double pole also, but you can't see the one on the other side because we're heading straight at it. That, to me, is a marker that leads right up to the gap between Gas Peak on the right, Castle Rock on the left. We're going to go up to that gap and then um, traverse Castle Rock, the summit of Castle Rock, all the way over from the east to the west. We'll end up in this area and then traverse the desert back to where we are now. Now, in the process, we're going to ascend. We're first going to pass through what I call the badlands. It's a real broken up wash. Huge sides that have been carved out. A little further over in this direction is the Tule Lake Ice Age fossil beds. And that's part of this whole system that you're going to be seeing. And there are fossils that are visible in this entire area. We're going to be winding through the Badlands and continuing upward. Eventually, we'll be ascending that huge alluvial fan. And an alluvial fan is the deposits from erosion washed down out of the hills above, and usually an area, a gap between two high points is a place that you'll find alluvial fans, and all the debris fans out, and you'll see um, the characteristics of alluvial fans and navigating alluvial fans. It looks easy from here, but wow, it's anything but easy as you get up there, and there's some dangers you want to watch out for. By the way, one thing that I have not mentioned is at the base of Gas Peak here is the Clark County Gun Range. So that's another landmark that we're aware of, and you can't go too close to that area. It's off limits. But where we're traversing is just fine. So here we go toward the power pole here as our marker, and then on beyond to that high point gap between Gas Peak on the right and Castle Rock, the smaller mountainous area to the left. Here we go. And by the way, a quick note, yes, you see the fence here. It doesn't mean people cannot pass through this fence. There is another entrance point, one of those hikers entrance points right over here. inviting you to enter the Desert National Wildlife Refuge as long as you're not operating a motorized vehicle. Hikers, mountain bikers, okay. Motorized vehicles, ATVs, um, dirt bikes, not okay. Here we are, only 25 minutes walk out into the desert, and civilization is already melting away, and the surrounding mountains around Las Vegas are coming into view. I'm going to point them out because it's always good to know your surroundings. And in addition, I'm going to point out a reference point for the return trip, because when you're out here, everything looks the same. And you could be thinking you're heading back toward your starting point and end up like going toward the strip, or uh, or off toward Sky Canyon. It's very easy to get disoriented. I do this kind of altitude, which started out around 2,300 feet. I do this only in the winter because um, spring, definitely summer and fall, you can get temperatures up to 120 degrees here, and it quickly becomes life-threatening. But in the winter, today is only 2 days past the shortest day of the year, December 21st, the shortest day of the year. It's the 23rd today. And so this is the time to be out here. But let's take a look at some of these mountains and hills that are suddenly all around us. So over in this direction, the Muddy Mountains. Muddy Mountain Wilderness is 1/3 the size of the state of Rhode Island. And there it is, right near the border of Las Vegas. And then over this way, there's Frenchman Mountain, very popular hike. And um, we've got adventures in all these places that I'm going to show you on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. Here to the left of Frenchman Mountain is Sunrise Mountain. Cool hike there. And then looking around, yeah, here is on the other side of Lake Mead, Arizona, Mount Wilson, that high point on the Black Mountains in Arizona across from Lake Mead. And then over this direction, here's the River Mountains. We've got some adventures in the River Mountains. Beautiful place with lots of geology. Wow. Okay, and then over here, the Railroad Mountains. And Scorpion Peak is a popular hike on the left side of the Railroad Mountains, east side. And behind, let's see, between the River Mountains and the Railroad Mountains, further off is the El Dorado Wilderness area. And then down in this area, the other side of the River Mountains, Hoover Dam. We got some great hikes in the Hoover Dam area. Okay, moving a little further, there's Railroad Mountains. And then McCullough Hills. I've got a few adventures in the McCullough Hills. We'll be doing a lot more of that, and I'll fill that area out. And then look here. This is the Las Vegas Strip. Sorry, today's a bit of a cloudy day, and that brings some considerations that I'll share a little later. You know, how weather can really affect your whole experience here. And then over in this direction, on the west side of Las Vegas, here is Potosi Mountain. That's on Highway 160 on the way between Las Vegas and Pahrump. And then here we're looking at the Rainbow Mountains. And curiously, you can see the edge of Mount Wilson in Nevada. So there's Nevada Mount Wilson and Arizona Mount Wilson. And then here's Gottlieb and the Whale Peaks, Damsel Peak, and we're in the La Madre Mountains Wilderness now. Speaking of which, here is La Madre Mountain as a high point, and just below it, you can see El Padre. Over here, Gateway Peak. And then a little further on, here's the Mount Charleston Wilderness. There's Griffith Peak. Charleston Peak, the snowy one on the left, and Fletcher Peak, the green one, or darker one because it's forested, just to the right. And then here's Mummy Mountain. And then a number of other peaks above Lee Canyon that you access through the Lee Canyon area. And I won't go into each of them. You can hardly see them. Yeah, it's a cloudy day today, and one of those atmospheric rivers is coming from the California area. This is very solid, the ground we are walking on, and all through this hike, very solid as a rock ground. But boy, when it gets wet, you can sink to your knees and more. It becomes almost like quicksand in some places. So that's one major thing. The weather can change in the terrain, and another thing is that you get flash floods. So anyway, yes, this is looking at the mountains around Las Vegas, looking at the Las Vegas metro area. Pretty amazing. And again, we are only 25 minutes walk from the starting point, which was about 500 feet from where I live. So this is just an amazing place. And by the way, everything looks the same when you're out here. How do you navigate back? It's easy to navigate up to the mountains because they're so visible. Navigating back, you've got to find on the horizon a reference point. And the reference point I go by, that no matter where we are, it's going to lead us back. There we go, right there. By shooting for these two small peaks between those high points on either side, that'll take you right back to your starting point. You need to know that so you don't go off course and end up like 5 miles from your car. Okay, let's continue onward. We'll cross under these power lines, and then we'll look up to the reference points for where we are headed. And here's one of the last roads you will see today. There are a few old roads out here. I think the no trespassing is due to the Clark County gun range. Beyond these signs here, we're going to be heading up in this direction, so we are fine. But here's the thing. If you continued on this road, you would hit the new Sky Canyon Parkway, I think it is, and you go beyond that, and suddenly you're on Kyle Canyon Road. So um, this may eventually, who knows, maybe it'll be filled out, but since it's in the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, maybe it won't be asphalted. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to cross under the power lines here. This is our first marker, these two power lines and our poles. And on the other side of this, we're going to hit the Badlands. A lot of different terrain here. Now we're crossing a huge wash. It heads down between the power lines. And then up in this direction toward the Tule Lake Fossil Park. And on the other side of this, you see some lighter colored hills. These are the Badlands. So here we go across this wash toward the Badlands, continuing on our route to that passage between Gas Peak on the right and Castle Rock on the left. Along the way, you'll come across a few old ATV roads, and there are ATV roads all around the Badlands. Hopefully they're not being used anymore. Anyway, yeah, I just keep going my straight line. That's usually better than the roads. The roads will invariably lead you off course, send you all around the place. Okay, now that we can look ahead, we're on the other side of the power lines. Yeah, we're heading toward the gap, but it's not quite as simple as that. Once we hit that large alluvial fan on the other side of the Badlands, the lighter colored hills, um, that's going to be crisscrossed by some pretty large uh, gullies, mini canyons. So what we're going to do is find an old road to the right of the gap that's going to lead us on up through the gap. So we'll be watching for that. Here we are in the Badlands, and you can see them stretching in both directions. Here we go to the east and to the west. We need to cross this area, and here's some of the challenge of crossing the Badlands. Of course, you want to minimize going up and down because you can expend a whole lot of energy and actually gain and lose a lot of altitude going up and down. Another thing about this is that notice the surface. Yeah, little tiny um, super hard pieces of badland. And when you're going up and down these hills, this surface, these little chunks are like ball bearings. So just watch your step very carefully. It looks very easy, but if you decide to be careless, you could end up slipping on this, and boy, you scrape yourself on this surface, it's like a cheese grater. So yeah, just be careful as you cross the Badlands. You can do a combination of weaving around the hills, and some of the hills actually we'll see ahead are, there are like 20-foot high um, ledges here. So it's a lot more difficult than it looks, but you want to keep your eye on the goal, which is the gap up ahead, and weave around to your best ability to get through the badlands. And this is actually the start of the badlands, and it's the tamest area where we are standing right now. And here's an example of some of the ledges that you'll come across, and you're just peacefully walking along, and all of a sudden you're at the edge of one of these, which this one is probably about 15 feet high or so. And remember, the edge is lined with those little ball bearings that just want to pull you over. So really watch your step. And yeah, there are ways to navigate. Um, look for gullies and little ramps that'll get you through. It's not hard to find them. Take advantage of them. Don't try to lower yourself over one of the ledges because it will not end well. Here's another gully. I'm going to take this gully down and then continue winding around toward the goal. Another example of some of the ledges that you'll experience. You definitely don't want to try to go over these ledges, but you do need to cross that area. I use this as my daily workout. I go out about 40 minutes and I've become very familiar with the terrain here and know where the ledges are so I can bypass them. It helps to be a little more familiar with this area, but you just have to get some experience out here. We've made it through the Badlands. They're behind us now. And we're on that nice, gradual, alluvial fan. Now, it looks very gradual and easy to traverse, but there are a few precautions here. One is that, remember, it's the runoff from the mountains above, and it's got a surface like this. All these little rocks came down from way above. And you can see there it's pocked with little gullies. When you get further up, these gullies can be 30 feet deep and 40 feet across, and the edges a 30-foot drop. And you got to find your way around and through those gullies. Another thing about this area is that the terrain, which looks open enough, it actually forces you sometimes into some tight areas where you're rubbing against these plants that you see around us. And there's sharp sage and cacti. The first time that I came here, my shoelaces were slashed and totally obliterated by the sharp plants. And imagine suddenly you don't have shoelaces. You definitely don't want to be on this surface with bare feet. So I learned very quickly, carry at least one extra set of shoelaces with you in your backpack. Very light, and they serve other purposes, but definitely if your shoelaces are slashed, you need to have something to replace them or you're in big trouble out here. And it's a long way back through a lot of challenging terrain that looked easy from a distance, but yeah, more challenging. We'll see some of the little canyons as we continue to ascend this alluvial fan. And by the way, it looks very gradual, but when you're up there toward the gap there, it's pretty steep, and over time, it just drains your energy. Okay, onward. And by the way, we're near the end of the extent of my daily workouts, and I make it to this point in about 40 minutes, but very fun, challenging terrain to cross on the way to this point. So it's very good for exercise and just developing strength in your ankles due to the unevenness of this surface. Notice the even spacing of these creosote plants all around us. And the reason that they're spaced so evenly is that they put out a poison in their roots that keep the other plants away, and that helps them to carve out a little area. Each of them has their own little area that can collect water and conserve the water, the rare water that falls in this area. So that's how creosote plants think and operate and stay alive. And here we are at the old boundary of the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, and this is about 3 miles beyond the new boundary. So the new boundary is 3 miles down in that direction where we crossed earlier, which means that 3 miles have been added to this refuge. And wow, um, imagine how many acres. It's just huge. You could put whole cities in that space. Anyway, so we're continuing on up. And by the way, the Desert National Wildlife Refuge was created for the bighorn sheep. I don't know that we're going to be seeing any bighorns today, but you know, it's always a possibility. And we're in their territory now. And by the way, just look around. There's Gas Peak. Look around at the amazing view, and we're definitely in pristine wilderness up here, looking toward Las Vegas, now toward the Spring Mountains. And on a clear day, especially sunrise, sunset, this scenery is just incredible. You've never seen anything like it. I came across this old road. Let's follow this for a while. It will speed up progress tremendously as long as it takes us in the direction of the gap ahead. I believe that it's going to circle around and head in that direction. If it doesn't, then we'll leave the road, but let's take it for a while, see how this works out. Well, now it's becoming more substantial as a road, and it may be the road I was talking about earlier that eventually guides us up through the gap, even though it goes in a roundabout way. It probably misses a whole lot of those canyon-like gullies that are between us and the gap. So it'll make things faster. Now, in addition to the creosote, there is a lot of yucca and some huge California barrel cacti, and then other varieties of cacti. So the wilderness up here is really coming alive. It's very beautiful. And the limestone here is ancient sea mud, and I found that the fossils are found mostly in the darker limestone. Not to say there's any fossils in this chunk of limestone, we don't know. But as we ascend, we'll be watching for fossils. And the fossils are 450 million years old, around that era, and come from a time when this whole area was covered by a shallow sea. I left the road, circled around too much to the right, and now I can kind of see why that happened. The gullies are getting deeper, and they all seem to cross the pathway between where we are and the gap to which we are heading. So, yeah, we'll see how this all goes. Hopefully, the gullies don't get too much deeper than this, or that could slow us down a lot. Remember what I said about the darker rocks more likely to have fossils? And here is an ancient 450 million year old or more nautilus fossil. That's an ancient sea creature. And we're about 4,000 feet elevation. I found another nautilus fossil once on Mummy's Toe at 11,000 feet, which is right here. That part that juts out in that little saddle just before the toe, and there's a cliff at the left edge of the toe. That right in that saddle, I found more nautilus fossils. And on Mummy's Toe, I found a seashell embedded in the limestone that looked like it had been alive yesterday. Pretty amazing. So, yeah, watch the darker rocks and you'll more likely find ancient sea fossils embedded in those rocks. And all the limestone that's around us has washed down from above. It'd be interesting to see what we find on Castle Rock itself. So, continuing toward the gap, and by the way, that other road led me off course. As I mentioned, roads will most often lead you off course, but I also mentioned that there is another road up here that will guide us through the gap. And actually, I'm seeing that road now. It is just to my right, right there. I may take it, or I may just continue to cross this open desert area. And both are about the same as far as difficulty and the time it takes normally. We'll see. I may um, find that this is a little too rocky and up and down, and then I'll just go over to the road to my right. More cactus varieties appearing as we ascend. A lot of yucca, as you can see, all around us. And Looking back to our starting point, always a good idea to know where you came from. It's that indentation and the right side of that indentation along those houses would be our starting point. And then down here is the Vegas Strip, kind of in the haze. Maybe you can recognize the stratosphere, some of the other casinos. So continuing on up, I may be crossing and taking that road a little ways above us, but we'll see. By the way, there's a beautiful Joshua tree forest right in the gap. We'll take a look at that. And in the spring, around April, it's in bloom. It's just incredible. Guess what? Here we are on the road. We just crossed it. And I'm going to take this road knowing from previous experience that it'll lead us all the way through the gap. And by the way, remember where I mentioned that you have a double peaked hill that is going to guide your way back to the starting point? That hill is right in the center. There it is. You see the two peaks? That is your guiding reference point. If you were to head straight for those two peaks, you'd make it all the way back to the starting point. The reason that I mentioned that is that when you get lower, all your reference points disappear, but the two peaks will most likely remain. And here's a closer look at Castle Rock. You can see the terrain above is pretty rocky. We'll see if we can actually go over the center of that ridge line. If we can't, then we'll go around the edges, but we're going to make the Castle Rock loop. And then looking in this direction, the even more imposing Gas Peak and their adventures up to Gas Peak, to both the eastern and the western summits. This up here is the western summit, but their adventures on Las Vegas area trails all around Gas Peak and up to the summits and across the top. Okay, let's continue on. Let's take this little road and get over to that gap where we're going to then take a left and begin traversing Castle Rock. Look closely at this ridge line leading up to the western summit of Gas Peak, and maybe, just maybe, that could be an approach up to the western summit. There are some spots that look a bit vertical, but if you can get up to the western summit, you pretty much got it made. You can traverse the whole summit area of Gas Peak over to the true eastern summit and do a lot of cool things. So yeah, I'll return here and give that a shot at some point. But today, yeah, heading to Castle Rock. Here's a cool cactus rock garden. If you had one of these in your backyard, you'd never need to mow the lawn. Now the road heads over this ridge and then through the gap. As we continue through the gap, here's a quick lesson in how to tell what the terrain should look like on the opposite side of a feature you're looking at. You can see how it's pretty steep and rigid on this side, but notice how all the layers angle down in a diagonal, more gradual direction. That tells you that the other side is going to be more gradual than this side. So yeah, it's a good thing to read the terrain and know what things look like around the next corner. And we're continuing on through the gap, and you can start seeing some of the Joshua trees. I'll show you that forest when we get up in the midst of it. And here's the Joshua tree forest. Yeah, you say that doesn't look like a forest, but if you're a Joshua tree, that's about as close as we get. And again, imagine this in bloom. Beautiful white blooms on the end of every branch in the spring around April. We're almost at the summit of the gap, and so here we are looking back down to Vegas where we started, right down in that corner that kind of juts out into the sea of desert. Castle Rock. And our next stage is to go through the gate up ahead. And then work our way around to the slope over here and just look at the terrain of Castle Rock and see how friendly or unfriendly that might be to traverse. Here's the gap. Here are the Joshua trees, the forest. There's Gas Peak. And now for the first time, we can see the north side of Castle Rock. Remember how I said the layers indicate it's more gradual? Yes, more gradual, but still rather steep. So we'll just see if there's I'm not sure I'm going to go all along the top. Just not sure. That looks like it's going to would be a slow traverse. I might go up there just to look around from the summit area, which is up here. Don't know. We'll see. But this is the slope on the north side of Castle Rock. and then it viewed back down through the gap to the Vegas Valley below. And you can even see that double peak mountain right in the center there. That is the marker to head toward in order to get back to our exact starting point. Okay, let's head over to Castle Rock. And by the way, the road that got me through the gap will then take you around the north side of Gas Peak, where there are some cool ascent points. You can see those on other adventures of Las Vegas area trails. And now you can see the sheep range, the high point up here, and then in front of the sheep range is that layered ridge line, which is Fossil Ridge. Lot of nautilus fossils, especially on the road that takes you through Yucca Gap, Mormon Well Road. And by the way, yeah, on the east side, the right side of the sheep range, huge valley with just an amazing Joshua tree forest that does not end. It's the largest one I've ever seen in my life. But you can see lots of Joshua trees around. They love this altitude. It's around between 4,000 5,500 feet. They love this altitude. Okay, a plan is beginning to emerge. Let's traverse this slope and see about heading upward up to this area here. We'll see what the terrain looks like along the summit area. If it looks like something we can traverse to the other side, we'll traverse it. If not, we can always descend, and by the way, there is a road down there. So we've got multiple options here, but let's head across here and then on up just to see what the world looks like from the upper area there. If we can make it, depends on what kind of barriers there are. Here we go. Well, this looks like as good a place as any to head up to the upper ridge, see what the terrain looks like up there. Quite a little ledge along the side here. Don't want to have to cross. So yeah, let's go up there and see if there's a crossing point a little higher. And we'll just look over the edge and see what things look like. Looking down in this direction, we can always descend to the road below. To continue the loop around Castle Rock. So lots of options, lots of exploration possibilities on Castle Rock. So this is just going to be one example today, but there are undoubtedly many more things you could do up here. Let's head up to the summit area. Okay, here we are on the Castle Rock Summit Ridge. Looking down through the gap between Castle Rock and Gas Peak, which is over there to the east. And you see how this side is pretty vertical, the south side, as we saw by the layers that we were looking at earlier. Yeah, getting over this next ledge could be a little difficult. I'll try descending and see if I can get over the ledge a little further down. If not, we can always go down to the road below. But look at the view here. There you've got Sheep Range, Fossil Ridge in the foreground. And then you can see that road that I mentioned goes around the north side of Gas Peak, offering some really cool ascent points, and I've got adventures on that on Las Vegas area trails. Gas Peak, we're looking at the western summit. Be pretty challenging getting up there from the west side and then back to the gap and the vertical south side of Castle Rock. Looked so small from far away, but wow, look at it here. And then just for perspective, there's the Las Vegas Strip. So there you have it. We'll see what I end up doing next. It's pretty amazing. If you ever wondered what was behind those mountains north of Las Vegas, here you have it. Total open wilderness. Desert National Wildlife Refuge. So now what we're going to do, descend a bit and see about making our way around this ledge to our left. Made it over the ledge, and looks like maybe I could have crossed over a little higher, because this side of the ledge is much more gradual. And I wonder if that's going to be true of the other ledges. What I'm going to do is head on up toward the summit again, and it looks like there's more of a gradual descent up there. We don't know for sure, but let's give it another try. There are a number of ledges below here, but it looks like the summit area might not be too horrible as far as just traversing the summit from up there. Let's give that a try. And then here's the valley below from this perspective. So beautiful up here. Here we are on the summit ridge again. This time I think I might be able to continue along this ridge. Maybe I could have before, but I just didn't trust some of those vertical areas back in this direction. Let's just see how things look ahead here. We'll find out. Summit ridge looking good ahead. No promises, but let's continue on and see how the navigation is up here. Yeah, getting over this area, the other side was pretty vertical. I had to descend and then circle around the lower left side of that ledge, Gas Peak. Onward. Well, the mind wonders what lives in here. Yeah, we're at turnaround time, but now the big question, is it less amount of time to continue around and then head back, or to turn around? So yeah, we can still go down to the road below and circle the base, but I'd kind of like to see what things look like up there. So let's continue along this traverse for just a little bit more. Okay, let's see what's over this ridge. Based on what we see, either going to continue along or make a beeline down this chute to the road below and continue circling around below. But let's see what's up here. More caves. A lot of caves up here. In fact, the whole mountainside is dotted with little caves and coves. Okay, let's get up there and see what the world looks like on the other side. Yeah, it's just too much to continue at high altitude. I'm going to descend toward the road and then make a beeline around the west end of Castle Rock, get back before darkness sets in, plus today potentially an atmospheric river. We don't want to be up here when that happens. So onward and circling down here. It's always good seeing when the path below leads all the way down. This is looking really good, and the roads below just came down through this above, and from above it looked like it was a drop-off, but every time I came around a corner a new way opened up before me. So yeah, down toward the road down there, take a left on the road to circle all of Castle Rock and really move around and back. We got a limited amount of time due to darkness and rain. Okay, we're off Castle Rock. Now it's time to make a beeline around the west edge and then back to the start point before it either rains or gets dark. And there's Castle Rock and Gas Peak, Fossil Ridge, and the sheep range beyond and above. Okay, here we go. Found this little trail. I'm going to take it and then cross over that saddle, round the west end, and then make a beeline back to the start point. See how all that works out. Here's Castle Rock from the northwest side. Over to Gas Peak. Fossil Ridge, the layered ridge there. And behind it, the sheep range. Okay, let's make some progress here. Well, it looks like this road is going to circle around right through that saddle area there, and then we can cycle back to Sun City Parkway. I think that's the name of it. It's new, and make it back through that way rather than traversing desert again. We'll see. Here is Castle Rock. And as you can see, clouds are increasing. Look at all those caves up there. What in the world lives in those caves? I don't think I'm going to find out today, but who knows? And there's a little arch. Pretty cool up there. Merritt's coming back on a longer day with more sunshine, but not during the summer heat. Here's the direction I've come from, working to make quick time here. Just had to stop and get a look at this. Look at this rugged limestone here. Wow. More caves. And by the way, I just remembered, I've called it a whole lot of different names. It's Sunstone Parkway that I'm shooting for once we round this corner. As with all roads, this road is not taking me where I want to go, taking me off course. So what I need to do is circle around the western base of Castle Rock and then find a sighting that's going to lead me back to where we want to end up. So here we go. Very, very dimly, I can see the double peaks that I mentioned are my reference point for the return trip. I can see them in this direction. You probably can't see them on the camera, but this is the exact direction I need to go. And so it's down the alluvial fan and over to the start point. See if I can get there in the light. I don't want to have to go through the badlands in the dark. And by the way, here's a look at the southwest corner of Castle Rock. So we have looped all the way around Castle Rock, hit the summit a couple times, and now we're heading back. Okay, here we are at the upper old boundary for the Desert National Wildlife Refuge. Another couple miles will get us down at our finish point if we gauge the trajectory correctly. So we'll find out how that goes. And then just look around. Frenchman Mountain, dimly seen. Gas Peak. And Castle Rock. And then the surrounding desert. So I think I've got an hour to make those 2 miles and still finish in the light unless I make a directional mistake. And there's very few guiding reference points visible due to the clouds and the oncoming darkness. And it's only 3:30, so can we make it back by 4:30 and hit the right spot? We shall see. Okay, I do have GPS for tracking, but I want to see if I can make it without using any instruments. And there is a light way down there. I don't know if you can see it. There it is. See that light? That is what I'm shooting for. Maybe a little to the right of that light. We'll see. And I think when I end up closer down there and I'm crossing the Badlands, maybe I'll check my GPS if I haven't by then determined, yes, I'm right on course. And then, yeah, looking around, curiously, it's not even 4 o'clock. But because of this oncoming atmospheric river and the shortest day, only 2 days past the shortest day of the year, light is definitely limited today. Okay, I've made the Badlands, and you can see the power lines. Maybe you can see them ahead. Here's a better look. No GPS yet, so we're doing great. I hope I can nail that final pass along the residential area. If I can do that, we've got it made. Probably another half hour. It's going to be dark. It is raining. Here's a look around. Yeah, can't see a whole lot. Can barely see Gas Peak and Castle Rock. That would be a beautiful sunset in this direction if there were just a few less clouds. Okay, let's continue on and make the final stretch here.